Today I'm taking a look at making my wet tumbling process a little more efficient. Currently I use this Chicago Electric dual drum rotary rock tumbler. This is a 2-drum tumbler from Harbor Freight. Here's the drums that sit in here, and as you can see I've got a pound of steel pins in each drum. A few years ago I picked up one of the Harbor Freight single drum rock tumblers that looks an awful lot like this, but this part's shorter and only uses one of these drums that's identical to it. And I started using it to wet tumble my brass. I did a bit of research online, and then I ordered 2 pounds of the stainless steel pins, these 2 pounds here, and they came with a bag of Lemmy Shine powder. The information I could find at that time mentioned tumbling the brass with a pound of the stainless steel pins for 3 hours in a solution of Dawn dish soap and a pinch of Lemmy Shine. And I tried it, and it worked great, and so I've stuck with that process ever since. Then a couple years ago I doubled my capacity by getting this tumbler with the 2 drums, and since we're creatures of habit, nothing else changed. I went from 1 drum to 2, but nothing else about the process changed. The process works, and it works well, so why mess with it? Well, several months ago I posted a video showing my process, and it was one of the first videos I ever posted to YouTube. And for quite a while it was one of my 2 most watched videos. Then last summer I posted another video, which is currently the most watched video I have, asking the question of whether or not the stainless steel pins are really necessary. And since that time, I've quit using the stainless steel pins with my semi-auto brass. Without the pins, the brass doesn't end up quite as shiny inside, but I rarely pick up my semi-auto brass from the ground, so I just order more range brass when I run out. So clean and somewhat shiny on the outside is plenty good for me for that. But other than the lack of pins, the rest of the process for the semi-auto brass is the same. Dawn, Lemmy Shine, and tumble for 3 hours. I received comments on both videos about ways that I could shorten or improve my process, and I've always intended to revisit it and do some testing. And so that's what I've done now. What you see here is the brass came out of the revolver, has not been tumbled yet. You see I've decapped it. There is some gunk in the primer pockets. It's not horrible, but it's a little bit dirty, and the inside is a little dark and a little bit dirty. Not horrible. And this is what I normally get after my 3 hours of tumbling with pins. You can see the primer pockets are nice and clean. The inside of the brass is very shiny. It's almost like factory new brass. When I first started wet tumbling, I had a sink in my garage and it only had cold water, and so I've always used cold water to tumble. But several of the comments that I got was that hot water works better. And so for all the tests I did today, I used water as hot as I could get it out of the tap. So this is brass that I tumbled in hot water for a little over 30 minutes with no pins. This is my old process, and I don't know how much you can tell on camera, but the outside is definitely clean. It's not quite as shiny. You can notice a difference, and the primer pockets, you notice a difference. Now this, again, hot water, a little over 30 minutes, no steel pins. This is definitely acceptable brass. But there's a difference between that and my old process. These 3 pieces were tumbled for 30 minutes in hot water with stainless steel pins. And again, this is the old process. And those, with the naked eye, you can tell a little bit of difference on the outside. The primer pockets are better than the brass that had no pins, but they still have a little gunk in them. And the inside, not quite, but definitely acceptable brass. These 3 pieces were tumbled for 1 hour in hot water with the stainless steel pins. And if you look inside, it's not quite as shiny as the cold water for 3 hours. The primer pockets are looking about the same, but I got to tell you, if you look at the entirety of the brass that was tumbled in for 1 hour in the hot water with pins, it's hard to tell the difference between that and the original. And finally, the semi-auto brass. This brass here was tumbled for 3 hours in cold water with no pins. This was tumbled for 30 minutes in hot water with no pins. And there is such a little difference that if I didn't have them labeled to which bin they came out of, I wouldn't know it. So from now on, I'll be tumbling with hot water. I'll still use the stainless steel pins with my revolver brass, and I'll still decap the brass before I tumble. I'll tumble it for about an hour, and for my semi-auto brass, I'll continue to tumble it with the primers in, and I'll let it tumble for 30 minutes without the pins. I haven't experimented with any rifle brass yet with the hot water and shortened time, but I'm guessing it'll be just like the revolver brass. An hour with the pins will have great results. This, like so many other things, is largely a matter of preference. Tumbling all of the brass for 30 minutes with no pins would certainly be sufficient. There's nothing wrong with this brass. But I like the little extra shine the pins and the extra few minutes gives the brass that I keep using over and over. And so I'll go for a little bit longer, and I'll include the pins. If you have a different process that works for you, that's awesome. In fact, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. I'll leave links to my other 2 wet tumbling videos in the description. Until next time, I appreciate you watching, and God bless.